far operating options that you encounter.
What happens, and you're saying a live access issue, but if you're in the middle of the night doing normal backups on files as opposed to doing a reorder,
Right.
what do you do for that?
The answer is different for OmniPlan Plus. For Omni Plus, the answer is a concept called a secondary or shadow VTran. The problem you have with file contention in running your nightly batch job is primarily in the arena of participants or a voice response system attempting to create a transaction while you're in the process of processing it. The answer to that problem is to have a secondary VTran. So you write to this shadow VTran file, which is transparent to all the interfaces, and right before the actual transactions are processed, you copy that file, process it, and then go about your merry way. We have clients using that in a production environment today, which is why we know it works. In OmniPlan, in my opinion, that concept should still hold. There's no reason why we couldn't do that. I just don't have any case studies for anyone to cite to you that says, here's what they're doing. So, yeah.
But regardless of whether in Plan Plus, the files are closed, you can't do inquiries early.
In inquiry, you can. There are file sharing options. Now, once again, the answer to this question deviates at least somewhat on the platform that you're on. On a Unix environment, it's not as bad because you can do inquiry access against the same file set even while it's being processed. Transactions are a different story, but inquiry is relatively straightforward. Mainframe CICS, there are file sharing issues, but there are products that resolve most of them from an inquiry standpoint, but there are third-party products that I know little about. I've heard of people doing. I'm not sure that answers your question.
Well, I'm saying, in our environment, we do actual reloads of reorganized data. And there's no way that employee will anything.
Well, that may be one of those contexts in which live access solution is just purely not possible.
That's why we would consider extract as a more of a important decision, because no one person 2 hours before they're not able to do it in the files.
All right, let's discuss that. This is an important consideration, and this is one of the primary questions your IS staff or perhaps yourselves are going through and asking yourselves and deploying both voice response and internet access solutions. Is the separation between a live access solution where you hit the record keeping system directly and an extract file or shadow database solution. The downside to the shadow database, multiple ones. First of all, you're replicating information, increasing your processing window because it takes time to copy that data. You're taking extensive measures to make sure that that data is synchronized because that's what your participants are going to see. There is the opportunity that what's showing up on the record keeping system is different from what's on that shadowy file. But in my personal opinion, the toughest part about that database is the simple things are easy, like pulling their balances down, indicative information down, status code, and things like that. That's relatively straightforward. What happens when you want your low max numbers or withdrawal max amounts? Generally speaking, you have developed custom calculators or business logic within the record keeping system to determine those amounts. So it was hard enough the first time to do. You certainly don't want to replicate that business logic on your database and store procedures or whatever methodology, but yet that is one of the most critical pieces of information participants are looking for. How much can I take out on loan? What is my withdrawal amount available? It's on the top 10 list of questions participants have. In order to have that functionality where the same number is broadcast to them, you would have to run that calculation on every participant on every plan so you could store it in the database, when possibly 5% of those participants, if you're lucky, will actually use that information. That A is dangerous and B is dangerous. So over time, the more plans you add, and just the trend the plan process is growing at the rate that they are, I have talked to your fund managers and really large record keepers that have gone to the extract solution years ago because that was the only option at the time, that are backing off of it today, because now they have to make the distinction when we bring a new client live, can we give them voice response and web access because our database can't hold everyone. And that's not the path you want to walk down. I understand the reservations, and I'm not necessarily sure what the exact solutions are, but it's a problem that you want to tackle. If it's just not possible, it's not possible, but that's where you want to be. Yes.
I'm sorry, instances in which you've seen companies using like the shadow VTran, refer to it, are they running online batch jobs during the day, or are all updates to the day they are doing?
They're doing like afternoon, like 1 or 2 p.m. batch jobs. Yeah, they do things other than just the 91. Now, the window that I've heard of for that shadow VTran is a downtime of between 3 and 5 minutes, which may be meaningless, but they're a relatively large client. So we're not talking about hours of downtime here. We're talking about a very narrow window of inoperability. For all practical purposes, that does not mean you can't say you have 24/7 access. For all practical purposes, you do. And a true 24/7 access scenario is relatively, well, not relatively, very difficult to truly achieve. getting back to functionality and reasons why, once again, for a live access solution is ease of setup. And as you have a larger number of plans that you're either converting or new business coming on, one of the largest challenges you face are all the steps that you have to go through to bring that plan live, so to speak. One of those, of course, is setting the plan up, period, on Omni Plus. Now you have voice response to worry about. You will have, over time, internet access to worry about. It says, okay, how many different platforms do I have to tell about my plan in order to bring this plan up? What we're trying to do is minimize the impact. So we communicate with Omni Plus in a live fashion to read the plan parameters and react accordingly. Case in point, let's say you have a plan that has allocation percentages, a single allocation set of percentages across all sources, just one controlling source. OmniWeb will talk to Omni Plus to determine that fact, and all the screens will represent that, the transaction, the inquiry screen. If you have another plan that supports multiple percentages across different sources, it already knows that because we can communicate with Plus and figure that fact out. If things change over time, you bring new plans on, the configuration process is about as minimal as we can make it. From an inquiry standpoint, you literally have to do nothing to bring a new plan live up against OmniWeb, because most of the things we need to know, we can communicate with the record-keeping system to figure out. The list of available investments and all those things are already available in the record-keeping system. And that's not necessarily possible in an extract solution, because when you go to an extract solution, you have to delineate what information you will pour down and what you will not. You're not going to carry the entire record-keeping system down to a shadow file. What you carry and what you do not carry can be various. And the reason I bring, this is an important point, and we're in the process of developing an extract solution ourselves for the PDS Connect layer. It is a very tough challenge to get that right. And we're encountering those hurdles. Every week we come up with something new that our live solution does so well, and an extract solution either can be very kludgy, very performance inefficient, or just very wrong. You just don't, you don't want wrong numbers broadcast. You don't want to increase your processing window. There are just very significant downsides to that. And we can appreciate clients' concerns of going to a live access solution, but it is not the right direction. And we have clients that are going. And in Omni Plus arena, the world is much easier than OmniPhone. On the Unix platform, things are easier than on the mainframe. And that's just an architectural difference between the two. All right. What I'm going to do here now is we have a demonstration where we have Omni Plus running under Windows NT in this room on the back on one of the servers. We have a separate web server, once again running under Windows NT back there, and we have a web client here. So the demonstration I'm about to show you is for all practical purposes real. This is not smoke and mirrors where we dummied up some screens so we can show them to you. We're actually getting the record-keeping system live. It's a test plan, so the information is not necessarily representative of real information, but it is meaningful. The demo I'm about to show you is what we call our out-of-the-box solution. OmniWeb is a very flexible, highly customizable platform. You can make it look however you want, so it's indistinguishable from what the original was. You can throw all our screens out, start from scratch, and use it as a platform to deploy your internet screens the way you want them. We have clients that have done that, where their solutions look nothing like ours, and you can tell, you wouldn't know that it was developed using OmniWeb. How far you take that customization process will vary from organization to organization. We've heard of clients that intend to have a custom look and feel on a per plan basis, as a custom kind of thing for each plan sponsor, so it looks like they have a custom developed solution. We have clients that say, okay, we're going to develop one single unique look and feel for us and deploy that across multiple clients. Once again, it's up to you. The authentication mechanism for plan access and participant access is the traditional social security number and PIN. This PIN can be the same as what's used for voice response. It's up to you. We can use an internet password as opposed to a PIN if you choose to. If you choose to do so, once again, it's up to your organization as to which approach you take. And we'll talk about authentication and security issues and procedures in a little bit here. That's relatively important as well. We'll click on the access button. At this point, in real time, we communicate with the backend to figure out who this person is, what plans are enrolled in. And we come to this opening screen that says, welcome. Fred, you are an active and contributing member of the Shipyard Savings Plan. Once again, this was a custom developed screen. We could go in there and change the verbiage based on the status and say 8 different things based on what their current status was. This particular participant is a 0-0 status or active and contributing. The reason this is important, this will come out later during the demonstration, is when we get into participant education and forecasting, based on whether they're contributing or not, you will probably want to lead them down different paths. From an education standpoint, if they're not contributing, you want to say, Welcome, Mr. XYZ. We understand you're not participating in the plan. If you would like to learn more about 401k and the importance of savings, click here. That goes hand in hand with online enrollment, so once you convince them, grab them, let them click a button, and enable them right there. We'll see demonstrations of that too in the prototype stage. All right, so we continue. We break the application or our particular interface up into 4 components: account inquiry, relatively self-explanatory; account changes, correlates transactions; plan level information, which can be something as comprehensive as an entire plan synopsis if you choose to do so, or just investment pricing and performance and things like that. Help, once again, this is very, very important, but it's going to be specific to each organization. One of the key reasons to deploy an internet access solution is to decrease the burden both on your voice response and your live operators. The more questions you can answer or empower the participant to answer for themselves through the internet, which a lot of people will do, the better off you will be. So you want to develop maybe a frequently asked questions document that will evolve over time and things like that. And that's where that would go. Let's look on account inquiry. We broke it up into an account overview. This is more of an account snapshot, which once again will vary from organization to organization, but traditional things like their current balance, vested balance, outstanding loans, indicative information like address and things like that will generally be shown there. Current balances are exactly that, both by investment and source. Allocations, how future contributions to the plan will be allocated. Loans, information on outstanding loans, which are all amounts available. And pending requests, so they can see what transactions, either through web or through voice response, through CSR or through an administrator, have not yet been processed. And giving the ability to look at those, yes.
Is it possible to set up each of those options depending on what kind of document?
Yes, and one of the common ways we see that working is, for instance, if a plan does not support loans, it is not meaningful to put the loan option up there and then tell them, well, loans are not available. It's better just to change the interface, so from their perspective, loans were never an option, so they don't start complaining what they not have loans.
Is it also possible for someone who, let's say, is terminated a loan, they want to see the account?
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that we're talking about is, and the tough part here is that we have our own ideas about how that should happen, distinguishing between terminated, active, pending, and I'm not sure how people handle this, but you may track all employees on the plan regardless of whether they're contributing or enrolled or not. And then at the time of enrollment, you just put their status, get the contribution rates, and then put them live. It depends on how you take it. There are big components of that. But yes, you can tailor the actual interface based on the context of the participant, which includes status, but which can include other things both about the plan and the participant. And we can see examples of that, but you can customize it to walking down different branches.
Yes, in your requests, are you actually looking at the file headers, or are you storing a temporary medium there?
No, file headers directly. And the reason for that is if you were to store them in a temporary medium, other interfaces, either our own or other vendors' implementation, would not be able to see that information. It's critical that they all be able to communicate with each other, even through the conduit of OmniPlus. That's the importance of that central repository. Yes.
Can I ask you, is that also true then for OmniPlan?
Yes, it's kind of similar. Now, the way we've seen it traditionally done is you have a file header or file folder based on which one you're using per day for transaction type in the daily environment, where you may break it out by saying put the maintenance transactions in one, all the financial transactions in another, but the idea here is you want to make it so the different interfaces can find the transactions. So you want a standard naming convention for your folders. You can come up with something simple with the month and day and then the transaction type, but pretty much that's it. You can do that. And you can customize the folder naming scheme that web and phone use.
So will you indicate if something's not in plan? Because I know you're
Yes,
on the plus, but I
right.
just.
I'll try and do that.
Or is it just safe to assume if you don't?
It's relatively safe to assume that, but if
Very
something
important.
is, most things are relatively important, but if something is critically important, please feel free to ask me about it. I'll try and adhere to that on the way here as well. Click on a couple of options here. Let's see the accounting overview. So it's fair, your total balance for the plan is $1,228. All of it is vested, and the Fed has an outstanding loan amount of $131.67. The contribution is 2% pre-tax and 3% after tax. All this information was gleaned, of course, directly from Plus. This entire screen is completely customizable. You have access to the entire plan record, participant record. You can pull whatever information you want to, including UDFs and all that kind of good stuff, and portray that information exactly the way you wish. This is just an example. And we can walk through some of the customizations after this workshop if you're interested in that kind of stuff. The balance number of this particular implementation is a hot link, so you can click on that. and get a breakdown on balance. The first thing we see is balance by source, a neat little pie chart, and the actual balances by source. The nice thing about a web-based interface, of course, is you can make it more graphical than your traditional interfaces, and you can do things like pie charts and things that are meaningful. So you can scroll down and see balance by investment. In most places where we use an investment name, you have the option to provide a link from that investment name either to an internal page that describes that investment or to an external fund manager's site, for instance, Fidelity or Vanguard or whoever's funds you support, so the participant can get more information, performance, or fund prospectus, or whatever they want to look at by clicking on the investment name, branching out, and circling back using the back button on the browsers. And the important piece there is that you don't necessarily want to replicate a lot of the information that is already readily available. Vanguard and Fidelity and all these guys already keep up with all that information. No reason for you to replicate their efforts. In some contexts, you may want to put a shelter between you and them, where the first time when they click on it, it gives you, gives them a general overview and the performance figures that you have within Omni Plus. You then say, okay, if you want to learn even more about this, click here to move to whoever's site, so they know that they're jumping outside of your record-keeping system, so they know that they're moving to a different website, so they don't have that understanding, depending on how you approach it. We'll go back to the inquiry. Once again, the actual screens themselves are not necessarily spectacular or exciting. The exciting aspect here is the fact that we are talking to live information, and this stuff actually works, and it's amazing. Current balance we already saw, what is that? Allocation percentage. This particular plan supports multiple percentages across the various sources. You may call these investment elections. You can change the verbiage if you choose to. In this particular context, you'll see them across all the sources anyway, but there we are.
About allocation, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
You mentioned the allocation percent, maybe it wasn't here, and I don't want to jump ahead of you, but about the ability to say, oh gosh, I think I'll enroll, or I'll change my deferral percent. Could you, if an employee wanted to change their deferral percent, is it feasible that this would, you could kind of have some kind of a link that would go into the employer, the clients, the sponsors?
If they have something like that already in place, absolutely. If they have an internet thing that we can branch off to, that's feasible. The other option that we've seen is when we create, specifically for contribution rates, because usually it's the employer that's handling the payroll and things like that, is we create a separate file on the web server to track the contribution rate changes, so you can take that file and send it, or the employer can download it from your system electronically or something like that, so they can get that feed. We've seen it approached both ways. In some contexts, our clients have said, we're just not going to take default rate changes across the internet, we'll let the employer worry about it. In our opinion, it's meaningful for us to be able to do it, especially as we get into the arena of forecasting and employee education over time. We want to be a little more proactive and be able to change those things. Once again, it's not our decision, it's yours.
Where are confirmation letters generated?
In Omni Plus, confirmation letters are an attribute of the record-keeping system. When you create a folder in Plus now, you can say when a transaction is written, you automatically generate the associated confirm letter. In Omni Plan, what we do is manually generate a 966 report letter transaction, create the confirm letter, because that's the only way we know to do that. And you don't want to do the fulfillment from the web server. You want it streamlined with your existing procedures you already have in place for fulfilling confirms, across voice response to CSR, whatever the cases you already have in place. Loan information, we show them the most key information on the first screen. They can click on the loan number and get even more stuff off the loan header record. Some of which is meaningful, some of which is not. Back button. We'll walk through a couple of transactions. Relatively important. Transfers. The types of transfers we support within OmniWeb correlate directly with restrictions within OmniPlus. No, we don't do really cool dollar cost averaging and things like that yet because the record keeping doesn't support it yet. When it does, we'll support it. Right now, our transfers are limited to interfund, move money from A to B, or throw everything up in the air and make it look like this, a reallocation or realignment type transaction. And once again, you can control what types of transfers are supported across your various plans, whether you can select a source to move money within, or it's by default all sources. It's all up to you. For our sample, we allow them to choose a source. So let's say we're moving money within employee cash pre-tax. Now, the way we've chosen to do the interface for transactions is a panel-by-panel interview-style approach. The reason for this is we believe the interface for a web application needs to be as simple as we absolutely can make it. The alternative was to throw 15 fields up there that address both the realignment and the interfund transfer and say, based on what you're doing, fill 3 of these 5 things out. We would rather actually lead them through the process and say, okay, what is it you're trying to do? Ask them the appropriate questions, skip the things that are non-meaningful, and walk them through the process. Yes, it's a little more cumbersome than a single screen solution, which we also provide, but that's what we recommend. So it says, okay, you have left to perform a transfer within employee cash pre-tax, left an investment, which we did. Here's an example of a pending request check. Earlier today, during a demonstration, or earlier this week, if this is not a daily plan, which I guess it's not, we found a pending transaction in the folder. It was a like transaction that involved the same investment. The option here is to cancel the pending request and proceed. Now, when you're talking about transfers, it's a very subtle, I don't want to say very complicated, but relatively important thing to detect truly conflicting transfers. It depends both on the source and the investment chosen. If they have a realignment on file, which is across all sources, that affects all investments, regardless of what they try to conflicting transfer. But they can have multiple transfers if they're in different sources, different investments, and all that kind of stuff. And yes, we handle all of it. We've spent about a month testing all the possible paths, and it works.
So would you write a transaction or such a one to file header underneath it that shows the cancel?
Yes. Yes. And now, as we get into talking about security and auditing and things like that, of course you have the audit trail within OmniPlus, like your activity history. OmniWeb identifies itself as a client to OmniPlus. So when you look at a transaction within the record-keeping system, you will know the fact that it came from OmniWeb because it will say so. In addition to that, we create a comprehensive event log within the web server itself that says, here's everything that ever happened. 5 participants signed on, and all of them went to balances, and 3 of them requested a transfer. That type of stuff. Business event level reporting functionality. On top of that, and this is more from a data redundancy standpoint, is we create a transaction log. Any transaction cards we write to the record-keeping system and we replicate purely for recreating them in the event that your system dies or the file, vtrend file gets inadvertently deleted and things like that, which at times happens from what I've heard. That way at least you know what happened on the web server and you can put those transactions back. Because that really, if you lose that vtrend file until the backups run, that's the only place they were, chances are. And you don't want to call 200 participants back and ask them what they did. That's why we do that. All right, so we've canceled our pending transaction. We're going to move forward. It says, okay, you're moving money with an employee cash pre-tax. We're moving out of company stock. Here's the amount we have available. And I want to move 100% out. Once again, this correlates directly with the feature set of OmniPlus. We do both dollar and percent transfers. And it says, okay, we're moving cash pre-tax 100% out. Let's say 50-50. One final verification screen that says, here's what I'm about to do. Click on submit. And we generate a confirm number. Now the confirm number is an important distinction between PlanWeb and OmniPlus. In OmniPlus, it works absolutely like you would expect it to. The confirm number gets written along with the transaction, so you can track it. Using the confirm number, you can find that transaction, and you can know where it came from and all that, because the confirm number in this particular instance has the application ID, the WB, embedded within it. In OmniPlan, unfortunately, there is really not a good place to put the confirm number, because there's really not a good place to put the confirm number. So we put it in our event log, because we have it, but we don't have a place to stick it in the record-keeping system yet. This is something you need to know. I don't know what to do about it. If someone has good ideas, feel free to share them with me. All right, so what happened at this point was we wrote a true blue live transaction out to the file header or the file folder within the record-keeping system. Really, truly, no playing games. That's what allows the voice response system to the CSR to detect the fact that that transaction was there. In OmniPlus land, this transaction will be picked up automatically by our batch process, because that's the nature of the business. When you create a transaction, by default in an active state, it's going to get picked up unless you say otherwise. In OmniPlan, it will get written to a folder that is up to you as an administrator or someone to submit that folder for processing. That's the way OmniPlan works. There's no distinction as to, so there is one additional step involved in the OmniPlan arena to make sure that transaction gets processed. Nothing you haven't heard of, which is nature of the game.
We got a question.
Yes.
Do you have associated edits with these transactions that reside on OmniPlan or Plus?
Yes.
How are they translated down to the website?
two levels of things. There are what we call proactive transaction eligibility rules that you can invoke. And what I mean by that is not allowing the participant to do things that the plan does not allow. For instance, if there is a subset of investments that they're eligible to move money out of, you can define that in the record-keeping system. If they can move money from A, if they can't move money from A to B or C, you can define that all that especially as it relates to transfers where it's the most meaningful. Minimum increment percents and all those kinds of things are stored on the record-keeping system. Now, the way that is done, and the reason for this is there is currently no better way to do it, is it's done using the OmniPlus or OmniPhone calculator facility. And the reason there is no better way is most of those business rules depend on the participant's current information, like vested balance on that particular investment, as to how much money they can move. Some of you may be tracking through activity history to figure out how many certain types of transactions they can do within a particular period, like one transfer per quarter, those types of things. Chances are you will already have that calculator written and you can reuse it. The traditional standard calculators we reuse as is. Those would be loan max, which you probably already have if you process loan modeling, and withdrawal max for your various withdrawal types. Other than those, OmniWeb or OmniPhone requires you to write any calculators, period. We talked to the record-keeping system to figure out everything we can. We tried to shy away from any uses of calculators except where it made absolute sense and there wasn't a better way to do it.
Can I just read that back? What you're saying is that other than withdrawals, loans, and what else? Those are the only ones that you translate down to the website in terms of editing?
All of them we do at a certain capacity. Transfers is where it's usually the most meaningful. That's where you have the most
Right.
but we do it across all transactions.
Right.
For instance, you may not be eligible to perform a certain type of transaction like a contribution rate change. There's a calculator on the back end that we invoke so you can tell us whether this participant is eligible for a rate change or not, because we on the web server can't know what the business logic is. That's the medium we chose for you to identify what the business rules for the plan are for the interface to know. Now, this is an important question because one of the things, we talked about loan max and withdrawal max and these standard calculators that most people already have. Unfortunately, until today, no standard has existed for calculators to define these transaction eligibility rules and this validation logic that we talked about. Everybody's done it, but in usually different ways. What we're trying to do between us and Sungard is develop a specification for additional calculators to define the rules that go along with the transfer transaction, or the rules that go along with requesting contribution rate change. So once you write them once, whether we develop an interface or some third party develops an interface, they can use that specification and all those calculators will carry all the way through. Our products already conform to that specification. It's an open publication, so if anyone is interested in receiving that, feel free to contact us, but that's an important development. Calculator is not necessarily pretty, but it's a very powerful feature of OmniPlus, and for certain aspects of the system, that is the only way to do certain things. Very powerful feature, there's a learning curve involved, but there's no better way. Just get back. Other transactions work pretty much similarly. Allocation percent changes are the same thing as a transfer, except we just ask them the percentage used in a particular source, not very meaningful. What I will show you is various implementations from the interface standpoint, how the application can look and feel different. One of the demos I'd like to show you is the same plan for a participant that is not contributing that in a pending status. Let's say we change the person's SOJ. Click on access. The screen that we receive here is different. Now this person's first name happens to be Captain. The test plan is Seaweed Shipyard, that's why. But anyway. It says, Captain, our records show that you are eligible but currently not contributing to Seaweed Shipyard Savings Plan. Once again, the plan name was derived from the record keeping system, so you can take the same interface for the document various plans without changing it. You click the continue button, and it says, okay, the 401k savings plan or whatever the plan name happens to be, is an important benefit. To learn more about 401k and why you should save and why Social Security may not be there and all those kinds of things that we've been saying for years now, click here. If we've already convinced you and you're here to enroll, click here, which is where online enrollments come in. A big piece of what we're doing for the remainder of this year in 98 is filling out this participant education, forecasting, projection, modeling, whatever you want to call it, aspect of the education process. A large part of that is content that is very specific to the individual organization. We will provide an out-of-the-box solution with the words that we like. Feel free to change them. It's a very flexible, very modifiable architecture. we will provide interactive calculators for modeling and things like that. Where possible, we will try to keep the formulas themselves open as much as possible so you can change them, so you can apply it to your particular environment. We're not going to get it right for all cases, but we need to at least make an attempt at it. The reason online enrollments are important is once you convince them, that is the point at which you get their attention and say, okay, yes, it's a really good idea. I should have started 3 years ago. Now it's as good a day as any. What do I do? The answer is not call us. The answer is click here, do it now while you have their attention. That will increase the hit rate on the number of people you can get to enroll, or if you're trying to increase participation, go ahead and let them change their contribution rate right there. That's why, in my opinion, it's important to allow the participants to change their enroll rates. That's when it starts to become really meaningful.